They say, oh, yeah, we know. He uses the idiom for angels, sons of God, the same one that Job used. In Leviticus 16, I believe it's 16. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. But I believe it's in Leviticus 16. It talks about the scapegoat on the Day of Atonement. Is that correct? Leviticus 16? I think it is. If I'm not, look it up. But where they have you got the two goats, and you cast the lots and everything. And King James says scapegoat. But if you actually look it up in Hebrew, it's Azazel. It's a proper name. It's an individual. You're sending the goat out to Azazel. Well, if all you have is a canonized text and you want to dismiss all the other texts, you have no frame of reference for who or what this Azazel character is or why they're laying their hands on a goat and sending it out to them. They're laying their sins on the goat, but it's symbolically by laying their hands on the goat, and they're sending the goat out to the wilderness. Well, in the Book of Enoch, it tells you that Azazel, all sin was ascribed to Azazel, and that's why they're sending the goat out to Azazel. That's precedence in the Book of Enoch. Numerous descriptions of giants throughout the Old Testament. Again, you have no frame of reference for that. If you have the Sethite view, there's no way you're going to explain that. Numbers 13 and Amos 2 being most notable, along with other scriptures obviously talking about Goliath and Og of Bashan and their relatives and stuff like that. Both Peter and Jude refer to the quote-unquote angels that sinned, who were bound in chains and cast into the prison of Tartarus. In the canonized text, do you have any story that you can think of that talks about angels that sinned, that were bound in chains and put in Tartarus? I can't find it anywhere. It's the Greeks borrowed from the Hebrews, actually, on that. The Greeks and Josephus, he likens the first generation Nephilim to the Titans of Greek mythology. He makes, and so do some of the other church fathers, quote unquote, church fathers. But this clearly shows that both Peter and Jude had read those texts, understood those texts, and under the Holy Spirit's inspiration, endorsed it with their statements that they made. And then Jude goes so far as to, in our vernacular, basically cut and paste the paragraph and put it in his book. Among other statements found in the canonized text, which find no precedence anywhere else but Enoch and other texts which affirm it. I put together timelines. Again, I've mentioned that before. I like to put things in visual format. And best I can figure out, looking at the information available, this is the timeline I came up with as far as when the Genesis 6 experiment took place, roughly 3550 BC in the days of Jared. First generation Nephilim would only live for 500 years. Within that time, they were to kill each other off in what became known by the Greeks as the Clash of the Titans. You ever hear the movie Clash of the Titans? That fictionalized story goes back to the real event of the first generation Nephilim that Josephus and others likened to be the Titans, were to wipe each other out in a massive civil war. Then around 3114, you have the Aztec calendar stone, the Mayan calendar. Remember all that, 2012 and all that? That shows up around 3114. Shortly after, about 20 years or so, is the death of Adam. Then you have about 20 years later, 25, the end of the first generation Nephilim. And then their parents, the Watchers, are judged, bound, and buried for 70 generations. Remember that, 70 generations. We'll come back to it. Then we have a time of peace after Enoch is raptured. Enoch was not, right? For God took him. And we'll talk some more about that in a little bit. And then we had a time of peace for almost 100 years, and Noah's born, and his daddy named his son Rest. Well, that just makes sense, because it was after the chaos of the Clash of the Titans. He named his child Rest. There is no further written documentation anywhere of other incursions of angels coming back and doing that again.